Hey, would you look at this? You might recall, late in 2020, I had my first opportunity to drive the 2021 Mustang Mach-E in Michigan. It was cold and snowy. I got to autocross it and drive it on the back roads. But that was just for an afternoon. Now I've had an extended opportunity to experience the car for just about a week or so, and I'm really enjoying it. Now the one that I have right now is a First Edition, which starts at $61,600. It does perform. This car is all-wheel drive and comes with the extended range battery, and in this configuration and horsepower rating, it'll go for 270 miles of range. Now what sets the First Edition apart, other than some badging, the red brake calipers, and of course this grabber blue paint, is so far only available on the First Edition. When the Mach-E GT comes out later this year, that one will be available in grabber blue. But for now, the standard editions, all the variants, it's not available in these other ones other than the First Edition, which is kind of a shame because it really is a great looking color on this car. So let's check out some of the features and go for a ride. Now, making the Mach-E part of the Mustang family was a bit of a controversial decision by Ford for many of the Mustang faithful. Let's keep in mind that they almost considered calling this vehicle the Mach-1, which really might have been upsetting for the Mustang faithful, but they decided to call it the Mustang Mach-E. You can kind of understand the decision to go with a powerful brand like Mustang because they're trying to make EVs cool, which is something this vehicle's competitor in Tesla has succeeded at doing, making EVs cool. And let's face it, what is cooler than a Mustang? Now, it is part of the Mustang family and wears the running horse, but as you can see, it's a slightly different variation of the running horse with the lines running through it. So you know it's a Mustang, but it's a different kind of Mustang. You can see it has the active grille shutters for improved aerodynamics and cooling. The First Edition has these red brake calipers and aluminum wheels. Good looking combination. Got the Mach-E designation on the side. The grabber blue really looks good with the black accents. Does have the signature tri-bar taillight design, but again a little bit different. Got that new Mustang running horse badge out back. It really looks great, you know, and definitely in grabber blue it causes some attention to be drawn its way. And one thing Ford engineers did is really streamline the aerodynamics as far as the door handles go. The driver door just has the button and this little handle you can use 2 fingers to open. What they did in back was get rid of the handle altogether, because what they did was study how kids open a rear door, because they figured this might be a family vehicle and kids might be getting in and out. So you just push the button and then it presents itself, but it's got a little bit of a stop in there so you don't push and jam your fingers in there. And then you grab it right here and open up, and as you can see, it has this padded surface inside, so it makes it comfortable to grab it. So, you know, it takes a little getting used to if you're used to a traditional door handle, but you adapt to it pretty fast. Now we go inside. I said this was kind of my default setting, unbridled with 1 pedal drive engaged. But at this screen, you can toggle through. You can go to engage, which consider that kind of like sport mode, or whisper, which is kind of like standard mode, the quietest, tamest version. There's also a valet mode. If you're brave enough to valet, you can kind of tame the performance so the valet doesn't get out of control. You can also turn on and off the 1 pedal drive, but Since it's an EV, I wanted to get the full EV experience and do the one pedal drive, but I did drive it a bit with the pedal, one pedal turned off. Since it's an EV, I wanted to get the full experience in one pedal, but I did drive it with one pedal turned off, and it is a lot more traditional driving experience. So if you kind of want to get used to it first, you might want to start that. Since it's an EV, I wanted to get the full experience in one pedal, but I did drive it with one pedal turned off, and it is a lot more traditional driving experience. So if you kind of want to get used to it first, you might want to start that way and then just kind of experiment with one pedal. But the big screen is pretty intuitive to use. I'm glad that they added the knob, which really is not a knob, but it's actually touching the touch screen for you on the backside and just simulates the knob, but it works well, you know, if you want to quickly turn the volume down, because I do like to drive around with the music cranked up quite a bit. You can access all your climate controls and all that stuff here. You know, it takes a little bit to get used to it, but you adapt to it pretty quickly. It's nice the Mach-E has a traditional dash screen. It's plugged in right now, so you get your state of charge. You'll get your mile per hour and where your shifter's set and all that fun stuff. More like a traditional car. When the car first arrived in my driveway, the neighbors came over. I brought the family out to check it out. My son slips into the passenger seat there and he says, after a couple seconds of looking around, "This is the future." And I thought, you know, he's right about that. You know, whether we like it or not, the OEs are hurtling toward electrification. Ford just announced that it's investing $29-something billion into electrification. And this vehicle is the first example of that push. And I have to say, for a first effort at an EV, Ford's really knocked it out of the park. Again, you know, you can debate the naming to the end of the earth, but I would have preferred if they just called it the Mach-E, but I understand why they chose to brand it as a Mustang when you're trying to compete with the cool factor of Tesla and whatnot. What's cooler than a Mustang? So, but if you can separate the naming convention and the fact that it's an SUV, you know, even Ford knows what they call a two-point pivot was a difficult thing to pull off, to go electric and to go with an SUV and put the Mustang badge on it. That's a tough thing to pull off, but I think they've kind of done it. And, you know, I don't think we're really too far off from maybe at least an electric Mustang option in a more traditional format that more people might be able to accept. You know, I'm always going to want to have a gas-powered vehicle, you know, even if it's my old Fox in the garage. And I think we'll always have those cars around. But as we start pushing forward, the new vehicles, obviously a lot of them are going to be electric or hybrids or that sort of thing. And the good news is that these vehicles can really perform. The GT that's coming out later in the year has considerably more horsepower. And, you know, I would say that this one's kind of on par with like the EcoBoost High Performance package in feel when you get on it. We'll give you a little example here. Right now, you know, I pretty much leave it in unbridled, which is the top performance, but you can move it to engage, which is more like a sport mode, and whisper, which is, you know, everything toned down. And there's also a valet mode. You know, I don't ever trust leaving my vehicle with a valet, but if you're stuck in one of those positions where you have to have a valet, you can click the valet mode so they can't experience the full performance of it. But right now, let's do that. I have it in unbridled. I have the propulsion sound on, which you may know is kind of a, you know, some people call it artificial. Let's call it an enhancement. You know, it's kind of a maybe a futuristic sound of what a vehicle might sound like. And here we go from a standing start in the 2021 Mustang Mach-E First Edition in unbridled. As you can see, it really puts you back in the seat. And it actually sounds good, right? Now Now, is it going to outrun a new GT500? No. But this thing is a heck of a lot of fun to drive. You know, as I said, I have it in one pedal, which you can turn off, but that's kind of the EV driver's preferred method to get the full experience. When you're in one pedal, you just lift out your foot off the gas, it automatically goes on the brakes. When the brakes use regen, if you're familiar with Ford's hybrid vehicles or any other electrics or hybrids, the brake energy is converted back into electricity that charges the battery, so you get a little bit of charge as you're driving along. You know, so far the vehicle, as I got it, you know, it only comes with basically, you know, like an emergency charger that you can either plug it into the wall outlet, or it has an adapter you can plug it into like a washer dryer outlet to get a little bit faster charging. It's going to be greatly preferred if you own one of these to have a dedicated home charger, so you can basically fast charge at home. I did take it out for dinner last night and used an available charger at a shopping center, and you know, put about, I don't know, 70 miles of range in it in an hour or so while I was having dinner. So you can pretty easily top these things off. I know everyone's kind of worried about the range. This one has a 270 mile range. I plan to take a little bit more of a road trip as I get deeper into this few days with the vehicle, but I had to spend time behind the computer writing about cars. But you know, you can top them off pretty easily. The Ford navigation system, which we'll go through in a minute, and all the other features on the screen, will bring up the available charging network. And if you own one of these and you have the Ford Pass app and everything is set up, then if you're in their network, you just drive up and plug in, and everything should be taken care of. It should start charging for you. So far it's not really been a big deal. You know, the charging stations are never going to be as available as gas stations just yet, but the navigation system makes it easy to find them, and you really just, you know, it takes maybe a little bit more planning. You know, like I said, charge it while you're at dinner. You know, if you're on a road trip, plan your brake stops and meal stops with a charging point, which you can do in the navigation system. You can set up those points along the way if you're taking a really long road trip. You know, some people like to do that. So, but so far, I would say that the driving dynamics of it definitely have a Mustang vibe. You know, they've tuned it up so it will kick out the tail, as we found out when I drove it. All right, so we're gonna check out some fast charging action. Little Dunkin' Donuts. Got our port right there on the side of the car. And we got our charging station. So I got it plugged in, swiped on the app to turn it on, and we're gonna spool up from about 39% after I took a little road trip today, and try to get her charged up, take her on another road trip. So in about 45 minutes I got it up from 39% to 68%. With the 2021 Mustang Mach-E First Edition, got to experience several days with the vehicle, around town, took some road trips, did all the usual supply runs and chores, and I have to say, I really enjoy this car. Now, I'm not going to try to tell you that it's as easy as owning a gas Mustang. Obviously, there's some challenges to finding charging stations and all that sort of thing. That's mitigated by Ford's navigation system, which will take you right to the most available convenient charging stations should you need it. But, you know, they're not as prevalent as gas stations, so but it does turn it into a little bit of a game. You know, makes it fun to kind of plan your drive and make sure you're going somewhere that you're going to have access to a charging station if you need it. You know, a lot of that is spawned from not having a charging station at my house, and I think that really is the game changer, right? If you can charge it fast and fully at home with a dedicated charging system rather than just the emergency plug that I have, you know, you can be ready for a pretty good road trip. You know, this one has a 270-mile range. I drove it back and forth to Orlando in some pretty serious, terrible Orlando traffic for a little weekend getaway, and the range was perfectly fine for that. You know, the hotel unfortunately didn't have a charger in its parking, but I didn't really need it because I was just, you know, going there and back. Overall, I just have to say that this thing is really a lot of fun. You know, it's to me it's not, and I don't think to Ford either, a replacement for a gas-powered fastback or a convertible Mustang. They've always said that it's an and, not an instead of, and that's really the way I look at it. I really, you know, I don't really sit around thinking of it as a Mustang. I think of it, I always call it the Mach-E when I'm talking about it or driving it. It doesn't really hasn't even registered for me that, you know, Mustang is part of the package, but it is, and you know, whether we like it or not, Ford's decided to call it a Mustang. I'm not here to argue with you about whether you think it's a Mustang or whether an SUV should be a Mustang. As I mentioned earlier, that 2-point pivot is pretty hard to pull off, so it's probably not going to be for everyone. But you know, the Mustang 2 wasn't for everyone, and you know, in retrospect, a lot of people laud it for keeping the Mustang going. So having this electric SUV as part of the Mustang family sort of extends the lineage and lets Ford, you know, talk about how many Mustangs they've sold and that sort of thing, and I think will help us keep the Mustang that we're familiar with and that most people consider a real Mustang going for a long, long time. Now, whether that's gas-powered or electric, that's open to debate, according to some news that's come out recently, but you know, I think we still have a good few years where we'll have some gas-powered Mustangs, and obviously we're gonna have all the ones that have already been built. You know, the whole gas versus electric thing, you know, is interesting. You know, I'm not here to tell you which way to go with that at all, but I will say that it seems like the manufacturers are certainly headed towards a lot of electrification, whether we like it or not. So the good news is that this is the first step in an electric for Ford under the Mustang name, and it's a pretty darn good first step. You know, they really did a lot of things to make this vehicle fun to drive, and yet, you know, make it practical as well because of its SUV form factor. I think if you ever give one of these a shot to experience it for yourself, you're not probably going to come away and say, I'd rather have this than a GT500 just yet. Although we don't know what this Mach-E GT is going to feel like. That's going to be real interesting. But I will say that I really think that if you gave it a shot, you'll like it. You know, it's a heck of a lot of fun. And kudos to Ford and its engineers for making the first EV a fun one, because it could have been dull. I don't know if you've seen some of the earlier sketches of what the vehicle might have looked like. It was probably going to be just, you know, another bubble going down the road. And once they decided to make this part of the Mustang family, they really stepped up both the styling and the performance attributes of the vehicle. And I'll say, you know, I'm sure the Grabber Blue doesn't hurt on this first edition, but anywhere I took this vehicle, I got some reactions. There were either heads turned, questions asked, compliments given. It really caused, you know, more of a stir than the traditional Mustangs that I've driven, unless, you know, they're of a significant performance model or they're a wild color also. So the car really got a lot of great reactions. And I think those are probably from, you know, your average person, not so much the Mustang hardcore. But if Ford is able to bring in those people that might not have considered a Mustang or an EV from Ford with a vehicle like this, then that's really a win for everyone that's into Mustangs, because again, that helps keep the lineage alive. So let's see what this baby can do. See that, get the tail out a little bit? I told you this thing was fun.